Let's start with the basics. Typically, a question in English will start with a helping or an auxiliary verb before the subject, which is usually a person or a thing. Sometimes it can also be a question word. Closed-ended questions are those kind of questions where you give the person only a limited set of options to choose from as an answer, which is usually a yes or no, because if a question starts with a verb, the answer is usually either yes or no. Now the point is, in most questions, you need a verb before the subject. For special verbs like the verb to be or the modal verbs, you just have to invert or change the subject-verb order. Here are a few more examples of questions with modal verbs. For most verbs, however, you need a helping or an auxiliary verb before the person, which is typically the verb to do. This is true for negative sentences and questions, past and present simple. But you can't use do and be in the same sentence. They don't get along. Of course, with what I call the 3 B's, he, she, it, you must change it to does. But there's no need to panic, it's only in present simple. And yes, you must get rid of that s and use the normal base form of the verb. Now here's a tip that will help you or your students improve fluency. The word does is only pronounced does if it's not connected to the next word. Does he like ice cream? Does he like ice cream? Yes, he does. Changes in sentences are only made once. If you change the auxiliary verb, you change everything. If you must make a change to a sentence in English, you just have to change one thing and make the new verb agree with the subject. If there is a helping or an auxiliary verb, you must make the change to that verb. So if you change the auxiliary verb to past, everything becomes past. There's no need to change any other verbs. Okay, here's another way to put it. You can think of an auxiliary verb as the locomotive of a train. When it moves and turns, the carriages also move and turn. Likewise, changing the auxiliary verb often causes other parts of the sentence to change. So all you have to do is to make sure that it agrees with the subject. There's no need to change any other verbs. As we've seen so far, if a question starts with a verb, the answer is typically yes or no, plus the verb that is used to start the question. But that's not always the case. Sometimes you expect much more than a yes or no as an answer. You want details. And to get that, you want to ask a different kind of question. The type of questions that are called open-ended questions. Some of these questions may start with a question word, meaning you start the question by asking for the detail you want to know. There are other types of such questions that allows for people to speak a little bit more. And to that end, you can use such verbs as can or tell, but you can also use question words. If you're an English teacher, you definitely want to use these tools generously because they are the key to helping your students developing their speaking skills and fluency. So instead of asking, who's your best friend? Or what's your favorite food? Why not ask, tell me about your best friend or tell me about your favorite dish? Now look at the following question and try to spot the mistake. Can you tell me where's the train station? Yeah, what's wrong with that? Well, nothing except that there's a question within a question. Well, you can't do that. Now here's a tip to help you avoid making that mistake. When you start a question, then the whole sentence becomes a question. So once you've started it, the rest of the sentence has to be in the affirmative. Now just to give you a summary, a question will typically start with a verb, an auxiliary verb, before the subject, which is usually a person or a thing. Sometimes it starts with a question word, but there's usually a verb before the subject. So is this a question? No. How about this one? Well, yes, it is. When a question starts with a verb, the answer is typically either yes or no. Now, how do you answer this question? Did you enjoy the movie? Yes, I do. No, I can't. Yes, I have. As we've seen so far, we say yes or no, plus the verb used to start the question. And that's largely the case when you give a short answer. If you expect an explanation or you want to have a discussion, then you must use open-ended questions. And remember that in English, context is important. Once you both agree on what you're talking about, you don't have to repeat everything. Well, why do you need all this? Well, you don't need perfect grammar to be understood, but you want to make sure that you really understand the basics so that you can speak fluently and confidently. So in this video, we've discussed two types of questions, open and closed-ended questions. How about rhetorical questions, tag questions, and others? Well, we have to leave those types of questions for the next part 2 of this video. Can you correct these questions? Now here's a little challenge for you. I want you to pick at least one question and answer it in the comment section below. We'll be looking at 2 of them in more detail in part 2 of this video. So don't forget to tune in, subscribe if you haven't done it yet, give it a like if you find it useful, and thanks for watching. See you in the next one.